Nancy, Ned, and George are in Connecticut. George's honorary aunt is famous actress Evelyn Caldwell. She owns the Red Barn Theater, which is about to open a new play. The culprit has sent Evelyn a series of notes threatening to burn down the building. The notes were printed out in a specific font. Let's say it's Webdings. Nancy quickly realizes the culprit must have used the Webdings printer. After all, no printer can print in more than one font. I'm not sure if printer technology was that bad in 1994, or if the author is just guessing how computers work.
Argo Font Book Review, Argo Font Book Review.
There are over 12 people working on the play, which is realistic, but also way too many people for me to keep track of. Here are the main suspects. Joseph Brunner is the angry playwright who thinks Evelyn is ruining his play. Fiona Sweeney is the edgy technical director. Marla Kramer is the absent-minded assistant who's always looking for her glasses. Don't worry, she's totally harmless, not a real suspect. Laura James is a homewrecker who craves attention and won't stop flirting with Ned. Matt Duncan is a gorgeous actor with a bad case of stage fright that's only soothed by George's loving attention. I can't believe one of Nancy's friends dates a soap opera hunk again. This is what, the 5th time that's happened in this series? A building catches on fire. It's not as exciting as the cover makes it seem. The fire is quickly extinguished because it's raining heavily. Nancy isn't sure if the fire's an accident or if the culprit is incompetent. Marla shows off the stage area, which has been booby-trapped by the culprit. Marla is almost killed by scaffolding, but Nancy pushes her out of the way in time. George gets mad when Nancy notices her crush on Matt. Nancy gets mad when Ned plays cards with Laura, and she gets even madder when they sing Christmas carols together. How could you sing Jingle Bells with another woman, Ned? You're such a traitor. The culprit leaves Nancy a threatening note, saying, I know you're a detective. That's a culprit giveaway. The culprit is the one suspect who knows Nancy is a detective. Nancy doesn't notice this fact. She claims it's impossible for anyone to know she's a detective. Which is wrong. She was shown on national TV as a detective in the previous book. Continuity! Matt and George have a cute moment at breakfast, and the technical rehearsal is a disaster. Laura insists on having Ned read some of the lines. Nancy is mad because Ned has never shown interest in acting before. That's not true. He filmed a soda commercial in book 75. Continuity! Matt falls into a river and breaks his ankle. This accident proves to be a blessing in disguise, as it generates a lot of publicity. For some reason, the theater has horses. Nancy and George go riding. The culprit purposely startles the horses with reckless driving, which lets Nancy meet the final suspect, Charles Ferguson. He's an incredibly rich man who wants the theater shut down because there's too much noise and traffic. He thinks he can buy the property outright. The culprit sends Evelyn a note that says, "Ha ha, April Fool, I was just kidding." Evelyn figures the mystery is now over. Nancy is smart enough to know otherwise. Fiona and Brunner get into a huge fight when she learns he based the villain of the play on her mother. She screams about killing him, while he screams about his reputation as a writer. Nancy stops the fight from getting violent, and Fiona breaks down in tears. Laura flirts with Ned some more. Nancy can't handle listening to this, so she marches out of the room. Gee, I didn't think she's the type to run away from her problems. She talks to Ned later. He says Laura is just a flirt. Nancy says, "So what? You're spending more time with Laura than me!" Nancy runs away again, but Ned chases after her. He explains Laura is flattering, and embarrassing at the same time. Nancy runs her fingers across Ned's face and says she's giving him a magic potion which protects him from all flirts. Nancy and Ned's relationship is rock solid for the rest of the book. I think it's supposed to be a romantic moment, but I thought the pretend magic flirt potion was weird. Marla messes up the investigation, and she spies on Nancy's phone calls. Joseph has a lot of information on starting fires, but he claims it's just research for his next play. Ferguson has a computer, so he is probably tech-savvy enough to use the Webdings printer. The culprit rigs another complicated booby trap, which drops a wrench on Nancy's head. Fortunately, Ned pushes her out of the way in time. On opening night, Ferguson comes to the theater, complaining about the noise. Evelyn says it's silly to complain about people leaving a play, because only a total loser goes to bed at 10 o'clock on Friday night. I guess that makes me a loser. Ferguson recognizes Evelyn from one of her movies. He becomes majorly starstruck and never complains again. Quite the opposite, they start dating in the end. Shortly before opening, Nancy smells smoke. Someone set a fire in a trash can in the men's room. The culprit tossed a lighted cigarette into the paper towels. Come to think of it, that's also a culprit giveaway. The culprit's the one suspect who smokes. The play is a success, and they get a bunch of positive reviews on TV. These reviews air a half hour after the play closes. I'm amazed the theater critics were able to go all the way back to New York City, write full reviews, and film them in under 30 minutes. Marla does a great job playing poker at the after party. Nancy realizes Marla is very shrewd with a great memory. Why does she pretend to be incompetent and foolish all the time? Nancy snoops in Marla's room. She finds a scrapbook of hate. It shows Marla's got a serious grudge against Evelyn, going back decades. She hates Evelyn for stealing her big break into show business. Nancy doesn't bother to tell anyone about this conclusive evidence. The next day, the culprit knocks Nancy unconscious, ties her up, and locks her in a car trunk. Nancy escapes fairly easily, which I thought was a cool scene. It's also kind of weird, the culprit knocks her out right before the play starts, but the culprit doesn't do anything until after the play ends. Why did the culprit knock Nancy out 3 hours in advance? Nancy discovers Marla crossed Evelyn's face out of a picture. This convinces her Marla is the culprit. Really? An X'd out face is considered more decisive evidence than a 30-year scrapbook of hate? Nancy rushes to the stage where Marla is starting to burn the curtain and some costumes. Marla explains all the details of her plan and how she is willing to die to get revenge. This is another book where Nancy forgets she's a karate expert who can disable anyone with a single blow. Continuity. So she and Marla just sort of wrestle with each other on stage, occasionally punching each other. Eventually, Nancy's friends show up, they stop Marla, and put out the fire. The end. Post-book follow-up. I thought this book was pretty bad. Nancy's out of character half the time, which makes me think the author didn't read any of the other books. I especially dislike the storyline, where Nancy throws temper tantrums because Ned talked to a cute girl. Why do they keep repeating this story so often in this series? It's never been good. The story with Matt and George didn't go anywhere. Evelyn, the victim, was okay, but she's not particularly likable, since she's too focused on the play to care about the mystery. The action is decent, although it doesn't feel like Nancy is truly in danger until the end. Hindsight is 20/20, but there are several clues to the culprit's identity that Nancy openly ignores. Overall, I wouldn't recommend it unless you're a fan of theater. There's nothing super bad about this book, but it's pretty unmemorable, and I found it a struggle to get through the whole thing. I give Nancy Drew Files number 90, Stage Fright, a 3 out of 10.